Shalom everybody and welcome back to my channel, Old Soul Torah. This week I want to introduce an idea that I think is very, very, very important, and that is that two subjects appear in the text side by side. First, we're introduced to the mitzvah of keeping Shabbat, and this is the final lesson after 40 days and 40 nights of Moses being on the mountain. This is the conclusion. Hashem wants Moshe to know and to tell the children of Israel that the one binding sign, everlasting sign for eternity between God and the Jewish people is the mitzvah or commandment of the Sabbath. Beini uben bnei Israel oti leolam. It shall be an everlasting sign for eternity. But why does this subject come right before the building of the golden calf, the sin of the golden calf? Is there a connection? And that's the question we want to raise. And I want to suggest that there's absolutely a direct connection between the Sabbath, Shabbat, and between the sin of the golden calf. If we look at the sin of the golden calf, not just as the sin itself, what happened, or the reasons, but the underlying cause comes from an illness of a sort. Okay? It comes with the illness, and the illness still remains with us to this day, and it's not about worshiping false gods. It's about the fact that when we have emptiness, when we experience emptiness, it's this, we're wired as human beings to fill empty space and empty time with something, anything, because the emptiness is unbearable. And oftentimes when someone has the emptiness inside of them, it's only natural to seek stimulation and to seek gratification externally. So empty internally, you seek to fill that emptiness externally with whatever you could. And usually, if you're looking in the wrong places to fill that emptiness, that's when you build your golden calf. That's when you get into trouble. Okay? But what is Shabbat, if you really, really think about it? Shabbat means, in the pasuk, in the verse in this week's Torah, it says, Uvayom HaShvi'i Shavat Vayinafash, which means, and on the seventh day, God, and I don't like this translation in English, but I'm going to give you the translation anyways, and then I'm going to tell you what the Hebrew literally means. Uvayom HaShvi'i, and on the seventh day, Shavat, God ceased from creating, Vayinafash, and he rested. Okay? Well, in the Hebrew, Shavat is related to the word lashevet, to sit. On the seventh day was the sitting, the act of sitting, Vayinafash, and he resouled. Nefesh means soul. Okay? So what does it mean that on the seventh day God rested and he resouled? To resoul means to recharge your soul battery. Now, if you look at Rashi and the commentators, they say it's not that God needed to rest. God doesn't get tired. It's just that he was modeling what he wants us to do in human terminology, in a terminology that we can understand. If you look at the Rashi, that's what he says. So this is kind of modeling what the seventh day is all about. It is a source where one recharges their soul battery in a way of sitting. Sitting implies non-doing. It implies a beingness. Okay, and Rashi even goes on to say it's not just a recharging the soul battery, but it's another word for soul is neshama, which also means to breathe. It's about breathing, taking a moment to breathe and recharge. Now, what happens to a person when they use Shabbat time to unplug from the week and rather to allow that day, the sacredness and holiness of that day? What happens to a person is that their soul battery gets charged. Once one's soul battery is charged, you depend on your external environment less for gratification. Remember, it's only when you're empty inside do you look for things in your external environment to fill that emptiness. That's golden calf syndrome. The Israelites had 40 days and 40 nights of nothingness, emptiness, both in time and space. There was no structure. There was no leader present. It was in the absence of Moses that fear took over, that panic took over. There were conspiracy theories and infighting between the different people in the Israelite camp. The conspiracy theory was that Moses was dead, and they were all wasting their time waiting. Why? How did they arrive at this conspiracy? Because in the entire time Moses was on the mountain, he never came down for food or water. So the conspiracy theorists said, of course he's dead. It's humanly impossible, biologically impossible to be gone for that long without eating and drinking. He's dead. So they all said, okay, while there was a lot of fighting within the camp, whether this was valid and true, they all agreed that on the 40th day, they'll see. Because Moses said, I will be back in 40 days. So how would you interpret in 40 days? How would you interpret that? Well, the way the children of Israel interpreted it as is on the 40th day, Moses is returning. And that's why when their panic built up into full-blown chaos on the 40th day because he didn't come back. What Moses meant was that after 40 full days and nights are completed, then you will see me. So it was really a confusion of terms, a confusion of understanding the timeline. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they said, that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what happened to him. But either way, what happened is the emptiness that the Bnei Israel were experiencing became unbearable. And just like in our own lives, okay? When people have time on their hands, they don't do well. Do you know that of those people that retire, for every 4 people that retire, 1 of them will go into clinical depression? It's 25 to 30% of all people that retire go into clinical depression. And this is not related to health problems. It's not related, but it's mental health problems. For the number one reason the psychologists say is that they don't know what their purpose is in life anymore. When you've had structure and purpose your entire life, and to go into just this open time, people do not do well. People fill that time with online shopping, with online gambling, online pornography, illicit affairs, drugs, alcohol, you name it. People go into addictions. People will build a golden calf for themselves, not intentionally, but as a consequence, as a way of facing the unbearable stress and anxiety of not knowing, of uncertainty, not knowing how to fill that empty time. So, while the Israelites were planning the building of the golden calf, that is when God gave the mitzvah of Shabbat. It all happened not one after another. Like in the text, you read the mitzvah of Shabbat, and then Moses goes down the mountain and he sees the golden calf and he breaks the tablets. Rather, both were happening simultaneously. On Moses' final day on the mountain, he was given the mitzvah of Shabbat. What was happening simultaneously? That Hashem, that God saw happening, was the building of the golden calf. So God, now here's, I want to say one other thing is that when someone commits a sin, I once looked up the word sin in the English dictionary, and it said an deliberate act of defiance or rebellion against God. The one problem I have with that definition is the word deliberate. I don't know that many people that want to deliberately act against God. Usually, no one's going to wake up in the morning and say, today I want to deliberately act against God. But that's a definition of a sin. In reality, when people sin, when they build golden calves for themselves and get themselves into real trouble, not just with Hashem, but with their family members, in their marriages, when you have empty time on yourself and you don't have a purpose in life, you're going to build a golden calf. You're going to get involved in something that is destructive. Well, Hashem saw that they're not deliberately acting against Him. They're still committing a sin of idolatry, right? But they're not doing it deliberately. They're doing it as a response to an illness. It's a spiritual, existential illness. When you don't have purpose in life, when you don't pause to reflect, when you don't pause to recharge your spiritual battery, your soul battery, when you don't take time to recognize and spend time being with your family and loved ones and community and with God, when you don't take that time aside to do that, okay, you're not going to last very long. Shabbat is testimony to a higher power, surrendering our control to Him, and trusting in His guidance. Okay? Saying the Kiddush is giving the testimony for two things: that God took us out of Egypt, the Exodus, and for God creating the world. Why is it important to remind us that God created the world? Because what we're doing, what we're giving testimony for, is the fact that the world can continue to exist without our interference. Okay? Because we're control freaks. We're supposed to improve the environment. That is our job. God put us in the garden, to cultivate the garden, to make the best use of it. The garden is our world. But mastery over nature only happens 6 days on the week. And on the seventh day, we give testimony that the world can continue to exist without our interference. Because there's one who is controlling the entire world. We're giving testimony that there is a higher power, there is a God, there is a Lord, there is a Hashem who is running the entire world. And what we do at that time is we practice being okay with being okay. I want to wish everybody a good week. And don't forget to take care of yourselves. Keep yourself in good spiritual fitness. And always have a wonderful Sabbath, whatever way you works for you at this time. Do it. Okay? Until next week, blessings and peace.
והאר עינינו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך